Hi everyone, welcome to Butterfly Yoga and Pilates. My name is Patricia. Today's class is for everyone who sits. So I guess that means all of us. Some of us sit to work, we sit to drive, to eat, to watch TV. So in today's class we'll look at bringing awareness into how we sit, and then we'll also look at counteracting the effects of prolonged sitting. For our class today we'll need a chair, any chair will do, and we'll also need a blanket or a small couch cushion. Okay. Grab your mat and let's get started. Okay, so we've got our chair, we can leave our blanket down on the mat for the moment, and we're going to start today in a standing position. So let's bring your feet about hip distance and parallel. And then from here, we're just going to bend the knees a little bit and hinge at the hips. And I want you to look at your knees and make sure that they're tracking directly over your toes. So think about your kneecap lining up with your second toe. I'm going to turn to the side now just to show you that from the same position in the side. So your knees are bent, your hips are hinged. It's a bit like you're in a mini squat position. And then take your hands onto your pelvis. Think about your pelvis being like a bowl of soup. And we're going to take it into a posterior tilt. That's the tilt backwards, where we roll the hip bones up and towards the ribs. And then we're going to take it in the opposite direction. So again, think of the pelvis like a bowl. And now you're going to tilt it forward so that the hip bones roll away from the ribs and the tailbone starts to stick up and towards the ceiling. So we'll do that a couple of times. So we're going to tilt the pelvis into that posterior tilt and then into an anterior tilt. So think bowl of soup backwards, posterior tilt, and then bowl of soup forwards, anterior tilt. So just do that a couple of times until you get the hang of the movement and you feel what it's like. So we're moving the pelvis between those two different movements, and we want to have both of these movements accessible, that anterior tilt and posterior tilt. Let's do it one last time. Think anterior tilt, pelvis rolling forward, posterior tilt, pelvis rolls back, and then come to standing. Okay, we're going to take those same movements now and do them on the chair. So we're sitting on your chair, your feet are flat on the floor, and then again think of rolling your pelvis backwards. Now you'll notice when you do that your lower back pushes back towards the back of the chair, and you can feel how your tailbone curls under, so that now you're sitting on the back of your pelvis. That's taken in the opposite direction, so that now you roll the hips forward towards the thighs, and the tailbone starts to stick out and you lift a little bit away from the chair. So we'll do that again a couple of times. Again, we're thinking of that posterior tilt and anterior tilt. Just one last time. Posterior tilt and anterior tilt. Now we're going to bring the pelvis into a neutral position. And in the neutral position, you'll feel that your sit bones, which are these knobbly bits just at the base of your bum, are pressing down into the chair. So particularly if you've got a hard chair like mine, you'll really feel how the sit bones connect with the chair. And this is our pelvis in a neutral position. So again, we want to have all of these positions available to us. We want to be able to go into that posterior tilt and into that anterior tilt. And maybe as we're moving through these two positions, posterior, neutral, and anterior, or I should say 3 positions, maybe you'll just find one that's familiar to you and you'll feel, well, is this how I normally sit? Or maybe you tend to sit a little more in this position. So again, as I say, we want to have all of these movements and positions available to us. We want to be able to move through them all freely. For the next movement, I want you to think about keeping your pelvis in this neutral position. So again, feeling that your sit bones are really pressing down into the chair, so that you're neither in the posterior tilt or the anterior tilt. You're sitting up nice and tall. And keeping your sit bones pressing down, keeping your pelvis neutral, draw your left leg in towards your chest. You can grab hold of it with your hands and give it a little pull in towards the chest. And again, we're resisting that urge to round back. We're keeping the spine nice and tall. And that might mean that your thigh doesn't come in quite as close towards your chest, but that's okay. And then release your left leg down, and we'll do the same with the right leg. So draw your right leg in, and again keeping the sit bones pressing down into the chair, keeping the pelvis neutral. And we're reaching up through the crown of the head, keeping the spine nice and tall. And then again, release the right leg down towards the floor. Now this time, keeping your pelvis in a neutral position, we're going to lean back. So that again, we haven't rounded the spine into that posterior tilt. We're keeping the spine tall as we reach the shoulders back towards the chair. And then this time, we're going to extend the leg. So let's take the left leg first. We're going to push out through the heel. And we'll simply just do that movement for the moment, just extending the leg, pushing out through the heel, and then taking it back down again. So do that a couple of times. You'll probably feel how your thigh muscle starts to work. And maybe the next time when you lift and extend the leg, with your hands down by your side, maybe you could think about lifting your leg up, just lifting a small bit up and off the chair. You'll feel how your leg starts to work a little bit harder, and then you can rest it down again. And all of the time you're doing this, you're resisting the urge to round and go back into that posterior tilt. So you're looking to keep your spine neutral as you lift and lower. And we'll just do 4 more. And 3. And it is hard work on your thighs. And the last one. And then take the left leg down. Give it a little rub at it with knees up. And then again, let's extend the right leg. So same movement now on the other side. And extend and bend. And extend and bend. And extend. And the next time you extend, hold your leg out there. And again, we're looking to lift just a little, keeping the pelvis in that neutral position, and lower. And lift and lower. Pelvis stays neutral all of the time. As you lift and lower, I think we've got 3 more on this side. And 2. Last one. And then take the leg down. And again, give your thighs a look at if they need to. So lift the leg up. You're going to place one hand on top of the other. And then you're going to press, just creating some resistance between the lift of your leg and the pressing down of your hands. Now what you might notice as you do this is that the area just at the crease of your hip starts to light up and it starts to fatigue a little bit. And that's what we're looking for. We're just looking for this muscle to be woken up a little bit. So let's keep pressing. We'll hold just for 3 more breaths. You might feel a little wobble, a little shake. If it gets too much, take your leg down. But otherwise, just notice how it feels. And then release. Let's take that to the other side. So lift your right leg up. Place one hand on top of the other. And then again, begin to press. Notice where you feel the sensation, where you feel the work as you continue to press. And breathe. And smile. And we'll hold for 3. And 2. And a little wobble, a little shake is perfectly normal. And then again, release. Okay, so now we're going to do a movement called a hip hinge. So let's take our hands right at the top of the thighs again, just where we've been doing that work. And then we're going to fold the spine over. So think of folding rather than rounding. It's like the 2 halves of your body are coming together in this direction rather than rounding over. So we don't want the spine to round to come forward. We're thinking of staying up nice and tall and instead hinging forward at the hips. So do that movement a couple of times. And now the next time you hinge forward, stay in that forward hinge and take a look at your feet. Find the tripod stance of your feet, which is your big toe mound, little toe mound, and the center of the heel. And let's draw them back just a little bit so that as we hinge, we can see that the nose is right over the toes. So we don't want our nose to be way back here or the feet to be way out here. We want to have our nose over our toes. And then from the position, we're going to reach the hands forward. We're going to press into the tripod stance of the feet. Begin to lean forward, reaching through your fingers to stand to come up to straight. Once you've come to straight, we're going to go back down the way we came. So start to send your hips back, making sure your chair is there, keeping that neutral line of your spine, and then slowly come down, like you're trying not to make a sound, and then let your hands rest down. Okay, let's do that a couple of times. We're going to reach forward, hinge, push through the feet, and stand. To come back down, we hinge again, reach the hips back, and very, very gently, very lightly touch down and onto the chair. we're going to add another little movement onto that. So we're going to hinge forward at the hips. We're going to reach the hands forward, press into the feet to lift up. And this time when we come to lift and stand, push your hands back behind you and think of the front of the hips opening up. So the space where we were working on that contraction, on that movement, now think of that space opening. So this time when you come to stand, think about the front of the hips opening as you stand really, really tall. Feel the feet pressing down into the floor and the crown of your head lifting up. And we're going to push our hands back and into space. And again, we're thinking of sitting the hips back, finding that chair behind as we come back. Let the hands come down and we'll start again, hinging at the hips, hands reach forward, press to stand, take your hands back. Hands come forward, sit down really, really gently onto that chair, take the hands back down. Hinge at the hips, reach the hands forward, press into the tripod stances of feet and stand. Now remember when we did our little hip hinge at the beginning, that mini squat, we looked at keeping the knees tracking right over the toes. So I'm going to show you this, what it looks like from the front. So again, you're hinging at the hips, you reach the hands forward, and we sit into our imaginary chair, as it is in my case. And then we're going to stand again, opening at the front of the hips and pushing the hands back. So if, like me, you'd like to do this without the chair, just scoot your chair out of the way or turn around. And again, we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to soften the knees, hinge at the hips, reach the hands forward, sit down into your imaginary chair, and push back with the hands opening the front of the hips. So now the next time we come into our spot, we're going to join the movement all together just to make it flowing a little more freely. So we're going to soften the knees, hinge at the hips, and the arms will come forward all at the same time. And then we'll push back and we'll stand. We're making sure that the knees are tracking right over the toes. The hands come out to help to counterbalance, and then we push back. So we're sitting back, hinging at the hips, reaching the hands forward, and then push back. Now, as we're continuing like this, you could continue like me, either without the chair or with the chair behind you. Or if you're finding that as you get down towards the chair that you're dropping down a little bit and you can't make the movement very smooth, you could always put some more cushions up on the chair to build it up so that when you come down you can find that space where you're really controlling the movement of your squat down. So let's just do a couple more, making sure each time that the knees are tracking right over the toes. We'll do 2 more. And then the next time you come down, we'll come down one last time. We'll come down and then we're going to hold the hips in that position. So again, we're sitting the hips back like we're trying to sit down onto that comfy chair. We're reaching the hands up, and now let's reach the hands up a little more. Reaching them up towards the ceiling. Really firm your arms and reach through your fingers. Keep sitting the hips back. Keep breathing. Keep smiling. And we'll hold just for 3 more breaths. Find that you're pressing down through your big toe mound, little toe mound, and the center of your heel. And then on your next inhale, reach your hands all the way up and come to standing straight. Okay, great. From here, we're going to turn now to face the chair. And we're still thinking of working on this area at the front of the hips. So we're going to take our right leg and place the right leg up and onto the chair. Scoot yourself in so that you're nice and comfortable here. If you want to have a wall that you can hold on to, just bring yourself towards the wall. I want you to think again now about that position of the pelvis and how we have the ability to curl the tailbone under into that posterior tilt, and then to go forward into the anterior tilt. And we're looking in this instance for the pelvis to be neutral. So we're just going to hover the right foot off the chair and take it back down. So again, we're making sure that as we lift the leg that we don't go into this rounded position of the spine. So you're keeping the pelvis neutral, and lift the leg and lower the leg, and lift and lower and lift and lower. And as I say, you can have the wall here if you need it for your balance, and lift and lower. Now let's try that on the other side. So again, your leg comes up, your foot comes up and onto the chair. Pelvis is neutral. We're going to keep the pelvis neutral, keeping your balance as you lift and lower and lift without changing the position of your pelvis. So your pelvis stays neutral as you lift your leg and lower your leg. And it doesn't have to be a high lift. And again, if you find that this is too much, you could always have your leg on something lower to start with as you lift and lower. Let's do 3 more. And 2. And last 1. And then take your left leg down. Let's go back to the right leg now. Right leg is going to lift up. Again, we're keeping the pelvis nice and still and neutral. We're going to let the leg lift and float, and then we're going to start to take it out to the side. So now we're working on the outer edge of the hip, and then we'll take the leg back to the center and release down. Let's lift it up, and then take it out to the side, back to the center, and down. Lift up, out to the side. Now the next time you come back in, maybe you don't need to put it down, you can keep it lifted, so that you keep working on that front of the hip as well as you take your leg out to the side and back to the center. If you'd like to take it down and have a little rest in between, you could do that either. We're just going to do 2 more. Leg comes out to the side, pelvis stays neutral all the time, last time, and back to the center. Okay, let's take that leg down. Let's take the left foot up towards the chair. Now what we want to remember too is that when we start to take the leg out to the side, that we don't want the hips to travel with us. So we want the hips to stay facing forward, like they're anchored to the 2 points of the chair at the top. So that when we lift the leg up and take it out to the side, the hips stay facing forward and to the front. And then we'll take our leg back to the center and let it rest down. The leg floats up and out to the side. And then remember that you can keep it hovering off the chair, or you can place it back down onto the chair. Hips stay facing forward. And again, you can have the wall beside you. And we're resisting the urge to turn or to let the hips go. They're going to stay to the front. Let's do 2 more. Last 1. And then take that leg down and give the legs a shake out. Perfect. Okay. Now for this one, you might like to have the wall beside you, or you might like to have the back of your chair handy so that you can hold on to it. If you do, you can just move a little closer to the chair. We're going to take the foot behind and bring your heel as close to your bum as you can. Often when we come into this position, a couple of things might happen. First of all, the knee might want to travel forward into space, and also the knee might want to travel out to the side. But we're going to, as much as possible, keep the thighs squeezing together and keeping the thighs parallel so that they stay together. Now to do this, I want you to think about the position of your pelvis again. We're looking for that posterior tilt, where the tailbone starts to reach down towards the backs of the heels. Now I'm hoping that what you're feeling right now is some stretch across the front of your hip and into your thigh as well. And we're going to hold that stretch just for a couple of breaths. Keep sending your kneecap down towards the floor. If you're comfortable here, you can take hold of your foot with both hands. Let your elbow points reach back and open up to the front of the chest so that you get a nice stretch at the front of the chest too. All the time we're thinking about the pelvis being in a posterior tilt so that we don't let the lower back arch and come more into a position like this. So you're thinking tailbone goes down, inner thighs squeeze together, the front of the thighs are parallel. Hold just for another breath. And then release. Okay, let's take that same movement out to the other side. So we're going to lift the left leg up, draw the heel towards the bum, squeeze the inner thighs together, take both thighs parallel, keep your shoulders square to the front, send your tailbone down, lift your hip points up. So you're thinking of the hip points lifting up towards the ceiling. Feel a sensation of stretch along the front of the hip, along your thigh. Maybe take the hands behind, opening the front of the chest. Hold for just 1 more breath. A little wobbling and shaking is normal. And then release and give the legs a little shake out. We're going to turn the chair around now so that we have the back of the chair into the center of the mat. Again, you might like to have it on your mat so that it isn't going to slide away from you when you push it. Okay, so from here, we're going to take the forearms, or if that's not comfortable, the hands, whatever feels better, onto the back of the chair. It's going to depend on the height of your chair as well, I think. We're going to soften the knees and we're going to do that pelvic tilt again, that posterior tilt and anterior tilt, just like we did at the beginning of the class. Then we're going to come into that posterior tilt. With the posterior tilt, we're going to keep that posterior tilt as we extend the right leg out behind. So you're thinking still of that posterior tilt of the tailbone like it's curling down and underneath. And then with that position, with your spine nice and long and lengthened, we're going to lift that right leg up off the floor. And I want you to think about lifting from your hip. And you can just lift so that your right leg comes in line with the rest of your body and then let your leg float down again. Now each time you lift or each time you prepare to lift, think of that posterior tilt as you lift your leg. So it's almost like you're thinking that the back of your waist is reaching up to where the ceiling meets the wall behind you. So that as you lift your leg, you resist the urge to drop your pelvis forward and dip into your low back. So you're keeping that posterior tilt, you're keeping your tummy drawn back and up as you lift your leg and lower. So again, we're not looking for a really big leg lift, we're not looking for the spine to move, we're looking to move just from the hip. So that really what's doing the work for us here is the bum muscle, the glute, as we lift and lower. We're keeping the low back lifting up towards the space where the ceiling meets the wall as we lift and lower. Okay, let's switch that to the other side. Bend the knees, find the posterior tilt, reach your left leg back behind, and again we're going to lift and lower, and lift, and lower, and lift, and lower. Remembering all of those points from the last time, that we're lifting from the hip. It's like you have a string attached to the back of your thigh to lift it up towards the ceiling. We're not looking for a really high lift. We're looking to keep the pelvis in a posterior tilt as we lift and lower and lift and lower. Last time, lift and lower and take the leg down. Okay, perfect. So we're going to add on to that a little bit, but you could continue to do that very same movement. Or we're going to walk back a little bit this time. We started with the left leg reaching back behind us. We're going to do the same thing again. And this time we'll take our hands onto the chair. So again, remember, you can be here with your forearms on the chair, or you can reach all the way back with your hands on the chair, stretching back as far as you can. Again, we're going to soften the knees a little bit and find that posterior tilt. And it's really just a tilt of the pelvis. So we're trying to avoid rounding the whole spine. We're really just letting the lower spine round. Your hands can rest on the chair to begin with, and then we're going to send the right leg back behind again, letting the top of the toes touch down and onto the floor. Keep thinking of that posterior tilt as you lift your leg. Now we're going to keep the leg lifted as we bend and straighten the standing leg. What we're looking for here is the pelvis staying level across the back, so that if we had a tray of our favourite tipple, we could rest it across our back and it wouldn't move. Now, depending on how you're feeling, if you're feeling nice and stable here, maybe you can do what I'm doing and take one hand away. You keep reaching through that extended right leg, and let's flex the foot and push through the heel so we get a really straight and solid line through the leg. To add on a little bit more from here, we could take both hands away, maybe taking your hands to your hips to check to make sure the pelvis is neutral. Reach through the crown of the head, reach through the right heel. And again, continue to bend and straighten, and bend and straighten the standing left leg. Again, if you're comfortable here, we can add on a little bit more by reaching the fingertips out on either side. Reach through the crown of the head. And we'll do just 3 more. Bend and straighten, and bend and straighten. Last one, bend and straighten. Take your right leg back in, come to standing, and give the legs a shake out. Okay, let's take that to the other side. Take your hands onto the chair and walk all the way back. As you walk back this time, you're reaching through your left leg. So you're pushing that left leg back behind you. You can push through the heel. And again, we're going to bend and straighten the standing leg. So you're thinking again of keeping that posterior tilt of your pelvis as you keep reaching through the heel, sending your toes down, toes of the left foot down towards the floor. Keep reaching the back of your waist up towards the ceiling. And then again, we're bending and straightening, and bending and straightening. So you'll probably feel that right glute is working the standing leg. You can have 2 hands on the chair, 1 hand on the chair, both hands on your hips, on your pelvis. Reach out through the crown of your head, keep your hips level. Maybe reach your hands out into that T shape, and we'll do 3 more, and 2, last 1, and then come all the way back and up to standing. Super. We're done with the chair. We're going to push it out of the way now so that it's off our mat and off to the side, and we're going to make our way down towards the floor. So from here we're going to come into a kneeling position. So make your way towards the floor and into a kneeling position. The first thing I want you to do is to take your rolled up blanket and have it so that it's about the width of your mat, and then roll it back up again and place it roughly in the center of your mat. What I want you to do then is take both knees and place both knees on top of the rolled up blanket. We're going to take our left foot forward, and we'll start with the left foot just a little further forward of the left knee. Let's find that posterior tilt, sending your tailbone under. Keep thinking of both hips facing forward all the time. As you take your hips, your knee, your torso forward into space, and then we'll come back to an upright position where the hip comes back over the knee. And then we'll go forward again, all the time thinking of sending the tailbone down. So you'll probably feel this nice stretch across the front of your right hip, and then come back up with your hip over your knee again. So let's travel forwards and back, and forwards and back, and we'll do that one last time. We'll go forward again, we'll think of that posterior tilt of the pelvis, and then just lean a little more forward so you feel that the pressure has lifted off your back knee. Now you can either stay here, or if you're comfortable, you can begin to reach that right foot up, like you're trying to take your heel towards your hips again. Again, you can stay here, or if you're comfortable, you could reach your right hand around and take hold of your foot and draw your heel close to your hip again. Let your elbow point reach up towards the ceiling, roll your shoulder back. So again, you've got lots of options here as to what position you would prefer to be in. Think of taking your shoulders forward into space. Hold it here for just a breath, feeling that stretch again in front of the right hip. Keep thinking of that posterior tilt, and every time you think of that posterior tilt and you try to activate that posterior tilt, you probably feel the stretch at the front of the hip become a little more intense. Hold it there for just one more breath, and then release your foot, release your leg, and come back up. Let's take that same movement to the other side. Take your right foot forward. It's a little further forward than your knee. You're thinking again of that posterior tilt. And then take your hips forward into space, and then take them back so that your knee comes over your hip. We'll go forward into space, and then take the hip back over the knee, and forward into space. Hip comes back over the knee. One last time. Let's go forward. Lean a little forward now. You can come more onto that front knee. Keep thinking posterior tilt of your pelvis. Lift the heel up towards your bum, towards your hips, and then reach the left hand back, taking hold of the front of your foot as you draw your heel up towards your hips. Again, you're still thinking of the tailbone moving down, hip points lifting up. You can soften your elbow, opening the front of your shoulder. Hold it here just for one more breath. And then release your foot, release your hand, and come back. We're going to do the same movement again on the other side. So left foot comes forward, and remember you can stay moving through the two positions, going forward and back. Or the next time you come forward, you can hold it there, lean a little more forward to take some of the pressure off of your knee, and then lift. Reach back behind, take hold of the foot, hold it there, soften the elbow. Now this time, really think of pulling your heel closer to your bum without so much as pulling with your elbow, but just think of that action happening more with your leg. And then see, can you release your hand and keep your foot as close to your hip as you can. Turn your shoulders back to face the front. Keep pulling your heel back towards your hip. It's hard, I can feel some trembling and cramping happening in my own hamstrings, the back of your thigh and in your glute, but just keep working it. And again, we're looking to get those muscles contracting, to get them to work on their own without us pulling them into that position. Hold here for one more breath and then release and then come back. Let's take that to the other side. Right foot goes forward, a little more forward than your foot. Travel forward, and again you can continue to travel backwards and forwards, or draw your heel close to your hip, reach around, hold on to the front of the foot, draw it in a little tighter. Think of that posterior tilt. And then see if you can think about really pulling your heel by using the muscles of your leg, your hamstring, your glute, rather than your hand. As you release your hand, turning your chest to face the front, keep drawing your heel up towards your glute. Again, watch out for that cramping and trembling. Really getting that muscle to activate for you. Hold it there just for one more breath. And then release and come back. Okay, from here, take your sit bones, bring them back towards your heels, and let's stretch out into here. So from child's pose, we're going to come into a very well-deserved downward dog. So we're going to curl the toes under and lift the hips up and back towards the wall behind us. We're going to start by pedaling out. So we'll drop the right heel to the floor as we bend the left knee, and then we'll bend the left knee and drop the right hip. And then we'll pedal like we're on a bike, just dropping one heel, then the opposite knee. Just do that a couple of times, just enjoying the stretch on the hamstrings after all that strengthening and contracting work that we've been doing. And then let the heels just rest in the direction of the floor. And people often get hung up here about where their heels are in relation to the floor, but just think of them going in the direction of the floor. It doesn't matter if they're not actually there. And then if it's comfortable for you, you can straighten your legs, but you can also feel free to keep a little bend in the knees. Reaching the hip creases up and back towards the wall behind you, so that you're really thinking of this space right here at the hip crease, reaching up and back towards the wall behind you. Draw your belly back towards your spine. Now let your head be heavy. Nod your head as if you're saying yes. Shake your head as if you're saying no. Think of rolling the shoulders open, sending your armpit chest forward. Hold here for one more breath. And then release the knees back down towards your blanket. Okay, we're going to come up into a high kneel position from here. So in that high kneel position, let's do that hip hinge movement that we did on the chair. So you're going to hinge at the hips and then straighten, pushing the front of the hips into space, and hinge and straighten and hinge and straighten. From here, keep that straightened position, as again you're thinking of that posterior tilt, sending your tailbone down, lifting your hip points up. And now we're going to aim to keep the knees, the hips and the shoulders in this straight line as we take our whole body back in that one straight piece, leaning back. You can take your hands out to the front to help to counterbalance that movement. And then inhale and come forward. Exhale and come back. Just to wherever is comfortable and to where you can maintain that straight line. And then come back up. We'll just do 3 more. Leaning your whole body back. So we're resisting the urge to come back into that hip hinge. We're keeping the tailbone moving down as we lean back. Coming forward. Last time. and come back up. Okay, from here, you can take your blanket and just scoot it off to the side of your mat. And now we're going to come down and into our bridge position. So find that you have length in the back of your neck. Have your knees and your feet lined up with your hips, and take your hands either side of your hips. I want you to find, if you're familiar with bridge, just find your normal bridge position, whatever that is for you, as in where you would place your feet. Press your hands into the floor, place your shoulder blades into the floor, and then roll your hips as you lift yourself up and into your bridge position. Hold it here for a moment, and then when you're ready, roll all the way back down again. Okay, so we're going to lift up again. Think of rolling your hips back towards the ribs, peeling your spine up and off the floor. This time we're going to stay in our bridge for just a little bit longer. I want you to think now of really having your shoulder blades pressing into the floor so that your collarbones feel wide. Think of softening your front ribs, like you're trying to attach your bottom rib towards your hip point. And then again, think of that posterior tilt of your pelvis so that you haven't let your back arch. You're really thinking of opening it at the front of the hips and sending your knees and your shins forward into space. Let's come down just for a moment, just to take a little rest. Rolling all the way back down and through the spine, and then we'll come back up again. Roll your hips back towards your ribs, peel your spine up and off the floor. And at this time, really find your feet here. Press into the tripod stance of your feet again, through your big toe, your little toe, and through the center of your heel. Hold it there for a moment. Keep thinking of that posterior tilt of your pelvis. Imagine that you're squeezing your inner thighs together, even though you're not actually taking them together. Just feel like you're squeezing them towards each other. And then let yourself come all the way back down again, rolling down one vertebra at a time, finding the back of the waist on the floor before the pelvis. We're going to roll up just one more time in this position. So roll your hips back towards your ribs, peel your spine up and off the floor. Think of the tripod stance of your feet, the posterior tilt of your pelvis, the softening of the front of your ribs, widening of the collarbones, and then press your hands into the floor. Again, back of the neck is nice and long, and hold it here for a moment. So I'm hoping again that you feel your glutes working, your hamstrings are working, and I'm purposely holding us in this position for a little bit longer than maybe we normally would, because we know that when we hold in these positions and get the muscles activated in these isometric holds, that they have an analgesic effect. So if there's any pain in the glutes or in the hamstrings, that holding these positions are really useful. Obviously not if the pain is there when you're holding the position. And then we're going to release and lower all the way down. Okay. We're going to come back up again. And the next time you come back up, I've got a couple of options for you. So again, find the tripod stance of your feet. Roll your hips back towards the ribs and peel your spine up and off the floor. I want you to notice now your hip points and how level they are across the top. We're thinking again of that posterior tilt of the pelvis, how the tailbone is reaching down towards the backs of the knees. We're pressing into the hands and using them for support. And then I want you to lift up just onto the toes of your right foot. Notice if that changes the hips, if there's any drop of the hips. Probably to the left side when you come up onto the toes of the right leg. And then just take that right heel back down again. Then lift up onto the toes of the left foot. Hold it there for a moment. Notice if you've had any drop off on the right side. See, can you correct it? And then come back down again. Let's roll all the way down through the spine again. So if you're noticing any drop off, you can stay with lifting and lowering the hips, or holding in that isometric hold where you're holding your bridge position. Or if you find that that was okay for you and you'd like to add on a little bit more, we can start to march with the legs. But we're really looking to keep the hips level as we do. So we're looking to really think about the hip points staying level as we lift the right leg The right knee comes over the hip, and then when we replace it, nothing changes, even through the transition from one leg to the other. So you're really pushing into the tripod stance of your right foot to lift your left knee and then replace it. So I've just put my hands onto my hip points to show you, but you can really use your hands for support. Keep thinking of that posterior tilt as you lift and lower. Sending your tailbone down towards the backs of your knees, pressing into the floor with your hands, with your shoulder blades, trying not to shift the hips left to right as you lift and lower. Keeping the low back lengthened. And we'll do one more, either side. Keep the lift of your hips. Lift your knee over your hip. Take that foot down. Last time. And lower. And then slowly release your spine all the way down and towards the floor. Let's draw the knees in towards the chest and rock a little left to right. We'll take our hands onto our knees. Then we'll make circles with the knees in one direction and then in the opposite direction. So letting your feet come back down towards the floor now. Just take note of where your feet are and where you had them for your last bridge position. And now we're going to walk the feet just a little bit further out so that we're changing the position of our feet for our bridge. We're still in that bridge position, pressing the hands into the floor, pressing the shoulder blades into the floor, and again we're going to lift back up. So it's very similar to the position that we were in on our knees, where we were leaning the whole body back. So you're taking your knees and your hips and your shoulders back into that straight line. You might notice that in this position that your hamstrings have a little more work to do. We're still thinking of that posterior tilt of the pelvis, of sending your tailbone down towards the backs of the knees. And again, I'm purposely holding us a little longer in this position so that we can really affect some change in the hamstrings and really get them to work for us. And then we'll release all the way down and towards the floor. Okay, let's do that one last time. Roll the hips back towards the ribs. Peel the spine up and off the floor. Send your hip points up towards the ceiling. Now again, if you find that this is too much, you can always lower down again. If you're new to this, you'll definitely feel a little trembling in the hamstrings. I can feel it in my own. So again, you can always come down, or we can stay holding the position for a little bit longer. A little trembling and shaking is normal, so don't worry if that's what you're feeling. But we never want to feel pain. And then release again and take your hips all the way down towards the floor. Let the legs rock a little, make any movements that feel good. We're going to do one more. So again, this time you can choose to keep your feet where they are, to walk them back towards your hips, or if you'd like a little bit more activation through the hamstrings, walk your feet a little further forward again. Press into your hands, press into your shoulders, and again we'll roll the hips back towards the ribs as we peel the spine up and off the floor. Keep pressing through the tripod stance of your feet, big toe, little toe through the center of the heel. Again, feel how the hamstring muscles contract here. Keep breathing, keep smiling, and we'll hold just for 3, and 2, and 1, and then lower all the way down, and release. Okay, let's do that one very last time. So when you're ready, walking your feet out to the longest distance that's comfortable for you to the floor, pressing your shoulder blades into the floor. Roll your hips back towards your ribs, peel your spine up and off the floor. Keep the hold, keep the lift, keep breathing, keep smiling. As we hold for 3, 2, 1, and then release all the way down towards the floor. Slowly walk your feet back in. Feel the back of your pelvis on the floor, and then draw your knees in and towards your chest. Rock a little left to right. Place your left foot back onto the floor. Take hold of the back of your right thigh and then begin to straighten your leg, reaching the heel up towards the ceiling and bend. This time, think about keeping your pelvis in a neutral position. If we let the pelvis go back into that posterior tilt from here, we'll probably get a bigger or closer lift of the thigh towards the chest, but that's not really what we're looking for. We're really looking to stretch out through the hamstring. So we're going to keep the pelvis neutral. And bend, and straighten, release the right leg towards the floor, draw the left leg in towards the chest, hold on to the back of the left thigh as you straighten, and bend, and straighten, and bend, just 2 more like this. And then take your left foot down towards the floor. Let's reach the hands out wide and into a T shape. Walk your feet and legs so that they're together. And then begin to rock your knees towards the right as your head goes to the left. Come back to the center. Take your knees to the left and your head to the right. Come back to the center. Knees to the right, head to the left. And just do that motion just a couple more times, just releasing any tension that you might have built up with all of that work that we did for the hamstrings and for the glutes. Draw the knees back in towards the chest. Let your hands rest on top of your knees. And then from here, as you inhale, let your knees move away from your chest as your elbows straighten. Knees to chest, elbows bend. Knees move away, elbows straighten. Knees to chest, elbows bend. And this time, as your knees move away and your elbows straighten, take your right foot down towards the floor, and then take your left foot down towards the floor. So that concludes our practice for today. If you'd like to take a few moments of relaxation now, you can do that. Find your comfortable lying position. Either stay as you are, or reach your legs out in front, extend your legs, let your hands come down, your arms come down onto the floor, palms of the hands facing up towards the ceiling. Little toe side of the feet falling out to the side. Close your eyes and just take a moment here to rest. Stay here for as long as you like. If you're coming back to your day now, thank you for practicing with me. Enjoy your day. And I hope to see you again soon.